So just before Christmas, a guy who I admire very much, Dilbert comic creator Scott Adams, who I only knew as a Dilbert comic creator for decades, and I literally have read every Dilbert comic he's written. They're all online. You can go, and I'm just that OCD. I started with his very first one and read them all the way through last year. So I'm a fan. I've read his stuff for forever. But just before Christmas this year, Adams declared on social media with a YouTube video and then a number of tweets on the subject, starting around December 20th, 21st, somewhere in there. He said, February 1, the public is done. That was kind of the slogan he started. His point essentially being that the American public has reached the end of giving up our God-given constitutional rights over questionable, ever-changing opinions from public health officials and elected politicians, above all, politicians. I support this move personally. I am somewhat sympathetic with the quandary that scientists and healthcare professionals find themselves in. For 2 years, they've been trying to nail a moving target. The information was always changing. That is not their fault. The information was changing. Yeah. And so they were trying to make recommendations and develop policies based on a constantly moving situation, constantly changing situation. We now know things today about COVID we didn't know a few months ago, much less at the start of this pandemic 2 years ago. So let's remember whose policies are to blame here. It's not the doctors and nurses who are working stupid long hours trying to treat people who contract COVID. And on top of that, all the other people they're already caring for, the broken legs and cancer and everything else that was already going on. It's also not the scientists studying COVID and trying to predict some things that are dependent on human behavior and choice, and therefore highly difficult to predict at best because we do crazy things sometimes. No, the enemy in this fight are the politicians who have weaponized both public and scientific uncertainty against the freedoms of the American people to make their own healthcare decisions, including in the most extreme cases, whether to inject into their own bodies a treatment that was rushed into production and the side effects of which, though in most cases apparently mild or even non-existent, they will not be fully known for years or even decades. And those are facts. Those are just facts. Yeah. I'm not an alarmist. I'm anti-mandate, but I am pro-vax. I'm vaxxed myself. But those are the facts.
Yeah, I'm vaxxed myself as well. And whenever somebody says that, we don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. There's just no argument against it.
And I'm one of the guys that it's going to happen to. And I don't know. I made a decision that I thought was best for me, but federal government isn't happy about me making a decision that's best for me. They want to dictate my decision. So columnist and political commentator Dino Skaros, in an op-ed for the Western Journal over the weekend, argued, quote, a few days ago, a scientist and a physician in a Wall Street Journal op-ed encouraged hastening Omicron's spread instead of attempting to slow it down. Surely we don't run out and ask people to sneeze on us so we can catch a cold on purpose. But pre-COVID, if we felt the onset of cold symptoms, we'd be annoyed, not petrified. Omicron is by no means guaranteed to be harmless, and high-risk folks, and please hear this, should absolutely continue to undertake the most stringent precautions. We don't want anybody getting sick. Nonetheless, contracting it may be our best way out of this mess over the long term so that once and for all, people can stop the masking, the vaxxing, the boosting, the paranoia, and get back to living life. That's Dino Skaros in an op-ed for us over the weekend. Skaros referred in there to an opinion piece published by the Wall Street Journal that argued that speeding up the spread of Omicron might actually be safer than trying to slow it, because the longer it takes to generate herd immunity, that's my phrase, not theirs, the greater the chances that a more dangerous super variant, their word, not mine, may be created by the very policies designed, at least on paper, to protect us. So I'm in favor of Scott Adams' Feb 1, the public is done movement. I support it. We have a few tweets from him that kind of give a little more detail about what he's thinking. Just a few quick ones here. First, simple individual action. 10% non-compliance, he predicts, for masks. He's talking about masking here. Will crash the system. And he's suggesting here, not being a jerk. Don't be the right-wing anti-mask person that the left thinks you already are. Don't be that guy. He says, keep a mask in your pocket. When you enter a building and somebody says to you, hey, this is mask only or whatever, cheerfully put it on just after you say, oh, sorry, I forgot we're ignoring science and freedom. And just keep doing that over and over again. And if 10%, according to Adams, if 10% of the American public does that, we're done. Who wants to be the guy reminding people to put on masks if that's the friendly but sarcastic response that you get every time? Secondly, so that's individual action. Secondly, in another tweet, he basically is suggesting putting pressure on public officials. Here he's tweeting Joe Biden and California Governor Gavin Newsom. Scott Adams lives in California. He says, look, we are ending this on February 1. And the implication here is, and by the way, you work for us, and this is what we're doing. We'd like you to join us. So some public, or some pressure rather on public officials to get on board with where the American people are already going. Finally, 3, the free market. If you own a business, Scott suggests, consider putting a February 1 sign on the window on that day. It's free marketing, and we'll buy there first, he says. And I'll tell you what, I will buy there first. No question about it. All I have to say beyond that is I'm in. Even if I weren't a Scott Adams fan, if I weren't a Dilbert fan, I'd still be in. I think it's a great idea. Somebody needs to draw a line in the sand and say, this is far enough, no further. We're done. Tara, what about you? What do you think about this plan?
I think it's great. I mean, today Boris Johnson just announced that for at least his portion of the UK that he's completely ending any kind of mask mandates whatsoever, which I'm like, oh my gosh, great. Like there's something on the horizon,
Yeah.
Something
Europe,
great's coming out of Europe, We're not, it's not just like the horror stories coming out of Australia at this point. It's like, wow, we're not crazy. Like Omicron kind of probably was like a gift from God at this point, just because it's allowing people to like survive, build up the antibodies, and not necessarily be in grave peril that they were just a few months ago.